crap, time is flying by today, dude.
Meh, I guess. My day's been kind of slow, so.
We're fit to find out how good I am because I... No, we're at 30.
All right. All right, we're close. And 30.
This is Armed American Radio's Daily Defense.
Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, because they don't want me to, that's why I do it.
Presented by X Insurance. X Insurance. From the gunbroker.com studios on the Crossbreed Holsters Platinum microphone.
They're never going to stop us here.
It's 2021, and we're in a new decade. Here is your host, the loudest conservative voice in America fighting the enemies of freedom, Mark Walters.
Inside Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, gunbroker.com studios on this Crossbreed Holsters Platinum microphone. I am, of course, Mark Walters, and I am filling your prescription for freedom today and every day across the country. Every bit of it being brought to you by X Insurance. I got a lot of email yesterday from a number of you wanting me to go back over that competitor, I put in air mark quotations, the attorney, and the comment that the attorney made about it not being their policy. And I will do that later today for you. It hit pretty hard, a lot of you, and I want to read that back to you because of what X Insurance is versus what that was. So those of you who wrote, I promise you I will go back to that later today. Lots to cover with you. I'm going to wind you down the yellow brick road for the first two segments of the show today. Then Nikki Goser is going to jump in and kind of pick up where we left off from Sunday's program. There's new legislation been proposed since we spoke with her on Friday. Nikki, of course, being the young woman whose husband Ben was murdered in front of her, her book, Stalked and Defenseless. Her husband's killer behind bars, continuing to stalk her, mind-boggling stuff. Continuing to stalk her. She is now prosecuting him again in federal court for stalking behind bars because he was using the U.S. mail system to send her letters. It's a remarkable story. It's incredible. It is proof positive that evil exists on this earth. So when Nikki comes in the second half of the hour, we'll get some more. We'll get the straight dope from Nikki Goser. But until then, there's a couple things I want to cover with you and then kind of wind you down this path. First off, the January NICS numbers are in, and NICS being National Instant Criminal Check System, the background check, the Form 4473, the one the left tells you that 40% of all gun sales don't get, which is a flat-out satellite radio moment word lie. And I quote from the NSSF's Director of Public Affairs, "It can't be discounted that many of these background checks for the purchase of a firearm are attributed to threats by the Biden administration to enact the most radical and far-reaching gun control agenda ever proposed. Americans are continuing to purchase firearms at a blistering pace. Blistering pace. That's undoubtedly connected to President Joe Biden's plans to attack the firearm industry by undoing and rewriting regulations and executive actions to target the firearms industry, which started with freezing the publication of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency's Fair Access Banking Rule. That means banks don't have to do business with you if they don't like your product. We'll go there in just a little bit. Won't spend too much time on that. We'll talk about that over the weekend. The Biden administration interfered with an independent government agency to further an agenda and perpetuate the illegal Operation Choke Point, meaning cutting off gun sales with credit cards. It's incredible what they're getting ready to do. By farming it out to corporate banks, that was just the opening salvo. He promised to pursue the repeal of the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. We've discussed it. Weaponizing the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Expletives, as I call them, explosives, to revoke licenses for minor clerical errors and ban entire classes of firearms from lawful ownership and tax or seize modern sporting rifles or AR-15 style rifles and magazines in a scheme that would cost those owners an estimated $34 billion for the privilege to own what they already lawfully own. The Biden administration has yet to put forth a single proposal to tackle the crime, lawlessness, rioting, and looting that has plagued this nation for the past year. Now, that from the NSSF's director of public affairs. And I'm not going to give you the numbers. They're off the chain. 2+ million background checks in January again. What you need to take away from that is, and this is, again, astonishing to me, there are those out there who, from the TDS they suffered from, didn't like Trump, would tell you that Trump was the worst president in the world when it came to your gun rights, yet none of what I just told you happened during the Trump administration, nor would it have. Now, the praise of the Biden administration from the Everytown for Gun Safety groups, I'm going to go there in just a minute, I'm going to read you some of that praise, would never have happened, nor did it happen during the Trump administration, the supposed worst president in the history for gun rights. It's a joke. To compare those two, there's blinders on, absolute blinders on. And I don't want to go backward. I just want to make that point because I still see it out there, and it is just incredible to me. It's very frustrating. When we know what we're facing here, that from the National Shooting Sports Foundation, Director of Public Affairs. They know what they're talking about at the NSSF. I've been a member of NSSF for many, many, many years. So let's go down a path. Let's go down a yellow brick road if we could. New Zealand. I was on with Mark Cox yesterday. I had a really good radio day yesterday. I was on the Mark Cox Show, 97.1 FM in St. Louis, Missouri, at 8:35 a.m. Eastern, 7:35 a.m. live on Central Time in St. Louis. I do a hit with him at least twice a week, or excuse me, at least twice a month on his 2A Tuesday program. Great guy, great host, and a very popular radio show. Love doing the program with him. After that, we talked about a couple issues. We talked about the SAPA, Second Amendment Protection Act. We'll talk about that if we get time. Of course, we'll be talking about it through the week. And we also talked a little bit about New Zealand and a second round of gun confiscation in New Zealand. And you may wonder, why do we care about New Zealand? I'm going to tie that together for you here in just a second. But that's what we did in the morning yesterday. Then, of course, this program live at 4 p.m. Eastern, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, 1 to 2 Pacific. And then right when I got off of this program, I was asked by SiriusXM, The Patriot, to join my very good friend, Stacey Washington, on the Stacey on the Right show last night at 10 p.m. Eastern for 15 minutes. We wound up stretching that into a half hour and taking a couple calls talking about gun rights. And Stacey's program originates also from St. Louis, but of course is heard nationally on SiriusXM, The Patriot. So it was a great radio day yesterday talking about freedom. And when I got on the conversation with Mark Cox about New Zealand, I saw and found all this stuff just started coming back to me because we talked about it in 2019 after the Christchurch shooting, if you recall. Terrorist in New Zealand attacks and murders and puts a manifesto out that says the reason he did it was so that he could implement gun control, so that he could disrupt the system in New Zealand. And, of course, New Zealand's prime minister falls for it. Now, the National Rifle Association, Institute for Legislative Action, has the following out. Never enough. Came out 2 days ago. New Zealand set for second gun confiscation. This is what Mark Cox and I were talking about briefly yesterday in the morning. If you recall, in 2019, unilaterally, New Zealand's prime minister said, you know what? No. Nobody in New Zealand, which is one of the safest countries on earth, an estimated 1.5 million modern sporting rifles, AR-15s, what the left would refer to as assault weapons, woo, one of the safest countries, one of the lowest gun crime murder rates in the world. In the world. And the excuse was handed to the prime minister to go after every single law-abiding gun owner in New Zealand. New Zealand's beleaguered gun owners are bracing for a second round of gun confiscation. Now, remember the first round. Targeting those guns, confiscate them, but we're going to pay you for forced confiscation under the guise of a buyback, which is Joe Biden's fourth bullet point on Joe Biden's gun safety violence measures. Number 4, New Zealand's beleaguered gun owners are bracing for a second round of gun confiscations following a raft of new gun control measures enacted last summer that are set to take effect on February 1, just 2 days ago. Kiwi shooters will have until August 1 to turn over their prohibited items or face severe criminal penalties. That means, in the essence of time, 5 years in a New Zealand penitentiary for having what they've had for years lawfully and harmed no one with because of the actions of one killer. On March 21, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern targeted New Zealand's law-abiding gun owners by unilaterally halting the sale, quoting from the NRA now, of semi-automatic centerfire firearms that utilize detachable magazines to normal gun owners. The Arms Armament Act 2019 was passed into law April 10th, received royal assent the following day. Key provisions of the legislation outlawed possession of all semi-automatic centerfire rifles. I want you to, you hear what I'm saying to you? This is New Zealand. This was 2019. We talked about it at the time. Why do we care about New Zealand? I'm going to take you down that road. But in order for you to understand how this ties together with us, in order to enforce the ban, quoting from the NRA again, the legislation provided for a firearm confiscation scheme. As with Australia's 96 National Firearms Buyback Program, law-abiding New Zealand gun owners were forced to turn their lawfully acquired property over to the government for a set amount of compensation. Based on, by the way, me telling you this now, on the condition of the weapon. And who gets to determine that condition? The government does. I'll explain it all and tie it together when we come back. Don't go away. Commenters on Facebook and YouTube on the streams. How you doing, guys? Hey, Greg, come back to me for a second.
Yep.
So I glance at the clock. It's 4:12. All of a sudden, I start hearing music. That means this show is going to go.
Oh, sure, yeah. Got to be done before you know it.
Yeah. Yep. Mark Dubes, I tell you, bro. Jeremy, pleasure to have you in here. Wish I had the hour to talk about this New Zealand stuff. This ties together really well.
So with the New Zealand thing, did they end up going door to door to confiscate?
No.
That'll happen here.
No. It's what they want to do. But New Zealanders reacted as you would expect law-abiding people. You know, a lot of good law-abiding people are afraid of the judicial system. They don't want to become a part of it. They don't want to be criminals. This is part of those, very difficult decisions Americans are going to be forced to make if the left continues their trouncing on our rights. And that's what they're continuing to do. And we're going to, unfortunately, have to make these decisions like New Zealanders did.
It almost feels like that all rights have shifted to privileges.
They're attempting that. That's socialism.
No, I don't think they're attempting
the rights belong
it.
to the elite.
I think it's been put in place.
What has been put in place?
You know,
By
you
the
got to have a
socialists.
permit just to have a free speech zone.
Pretty much.
Got to have a permit to march.
Rioters don't. Looters don't.
Well, those are criminals, even though they're not
No, they're
considered
not.
that by
Those
the
are
media.
peaceful people. Those are peaceful marchers that somehow don't need to wear masks, won't get COVID.
I know.
They're all peaceful. You would have
Still
loved to have
would
been a fly on the wall in my kitchen this morning when I made that phone call at 12:04 and said, I'm sorry. I must have missed something. It's 4 minutes after noon and the crew hasn't gotten here
Yeah, we're
yet.
close. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that one.
Here we go. 30.
This upcoming segment of Armed American Radio is being sponsored by GunBroker.com, the world's largest online marketplace to buy and sell firearms, ammo, and related accessories. That's GunBroker.com. Welcome back to the show. I got an email today from someone. I've got so many email accounts. I'm going to paraphrase for you. Bought the sheets from MyPillow, picked up some crossbreed stuff, got their first order of Defender coffee, ordered 1,000 rounds from GunBroker, and I was just out there just supporting Armed American Radio partners like nobody's business. I can't thank you enough if you're doing that. Remember that this is, and I love this. This is just amazing. This is, remember the microphone? Crossbreed Holsters microphone. Think about that. Think about why. Crossbreed Holsters been here for years and years and years and years. This is the GunBroker.com studios. All of this is being presented to you by X Insurance. I'm going to read you the quote from that attorney, because I got so many emails on that, people wanting me to do that, and I'm going to do that again today at some point. I'll get to that. But on the essence of time, let me go now back to this road that I want to take you down, and it winds through New Zealand. Remember 2019. I just set out for you in the last segment. The National Rifle Association has a great piece over there reminding us what happened in 2019, and now reminding us that they're now doing it again, because the beleaguered gun owners are bracing for a second round of gun confiscation. So here's what's getting ready to happen. Now, the New Zealand police summarize the newly prohibited firearms as follows. Semi-auto pistols. Small semi-automatic pistol is a small, because it's excluded, it goes on to define what's a small pistol. Suffice to say, semi-automatic pistols. Let's leave it at that. In addition to prohibiting new categories of firearm, the legislation cut the period for a first-time firearms license from 10 years to 5. Legislation also mandated that police notify a firearm license holder's physician of the individual's status as a license holder. Think about that. They're your doctor. As required physicians to report to the police on the health conditions of the license holder. See how this is why we were concerned about Obamacare years ago. Guns as a health issue. Obamacare, Democrats, you know where they're going with all this stuff. So what they're doing is they're putting together in New Zealand a second round of confiscation. Why do we talk about that? Well, I just mentioned to you at the top of the hour that Americans are buying guns at a blistering pace, and I quoted for you from the National Shooting Sports Foundation's public affairs director. Now let me quickly keep all this in mind, and we're going to go back to New Zealand. This is an opinion piece in the Washington Post a couple days ago. Guns are white supremacy's deadliest weapon. We must disarm hate. Now, this is I got to tell you, expertly written smear campaign by the opinion writer, who is the Reverend Sharon Risher, a member of the Everytown Survivor Network. Her mother was killed in that horrific shooting at the Charleston's Mother Emanuel Church with the 8 other black Americans who were murdered there. And that's awful. But it doesn't give her the right to come after my guns. does it? No, it does not. Simply put, she's comparing the Confederate flag, a photograph from the Washington riot, the insurrection, the handful of people who we talked about yesterday that were being compared to post-Civil War violence. It's astonishing how they're creating this narrative, but they're doing it again. One picture of a Confederate flag-waving idiot is now the primary symbol of white supremacists and the deadliest of all weapons, their guns. We have begun as a nation to slowly address the problem of the Confederate battle flag. NASCAR recently banned it from events. Mississippi removed it from the state flag. My own story, it flew over the South Carolina Capitol the day my mom was murdered. That was finally taken down. The Charleston loophole. So I share my story today alongside other members of the Everytown Survivor Network to ask that as we reckon with hate in America, we also take action to disarm it. All gun owners are white supremacist haters. This is the narrative that's being driven. Now keep in mind from the national shootings, gun sales are through the roof. Highest they've ever been. More armed Americans ever. I guess we're all white supremacist haters. Now back to New Zealand. Let's wind down that road. Remember what I told you. New Zealand is now in its second round of confiscation. Let me take you now back to, what was the exact date? March 22nd, 2019, 0500, 5 a.m. American gun control advocates and Democratic politicians took to social media to celebrate New Zealand's plan to ban and confiscate many semi-automatic rifles and magazines on Thursday in the wake of the deadly Christchurch mosque attack. The narrative is now being painted that the Capitol riot by a handful of idiots out of hundreds of thousands of patriots that were there, who were allowed to be there, doing what they were allowed to do, and a handful of idiots that everyone that I know in the gun rights community has decried as the morons that they were and will be punished, as they should be, is now being painted across the spectrum to apply to everybody that was there. And now it's a gun issue. It's a gun event, which it never was, but it is now because they say it is. And now it's all white supremacists and all gun owners are white supremacists and all of us must be disarmed. And we go to New Zealand where round 2 is occurring right now as we speak, round 2. And I want you to go back to listen to what some of the Democrats had to say. A number of leading Democrats in Congress tweeted their support for New Zealand's actions. Every semi-automatic weapon used in the terror attack on Friday will be banned. The legislation will be drafted and introduced in urgency. That's Representative Ted Deutsch, Democrat, Florida. He said in his tweet, not thoughts, not prayers, actions. Senator Chris Murphy, that gun-hating freakazoid. See? It's not that hard. That's what he tweeted in support of New Zealand. It is his party now in control of the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. And the same with Representative Ted Deutsch, Democrat, Florida. Democrat Party. His party now in control of all 3 levers of power. Question, how did New Zealand ban assault weapons 5 days after a mass shooting? Representative David Cicilline, Democrat, Rhode Island, chair of the Democrat Policy and Communications Committee, asked. A, they're politicians. The answer, their politicians aren't bought and paid for by the gun lobby. By the way, I'm the gun lobby. This is what real action to stop gun violence looks like. Senator Bernie Sanders, Vermont, who is currently one of the frontrunners for the nomination. Remember, he was running for president. Here's what he said. Quote, we must follow New Zealand. We must follow New Zealand's lead. Take on the NRA and ban the sale of and distribution of assault weapons in the United States. We have to take them on. We must follow New Zealand's lead. Take on the NRA and ban the sale and distribution of assault weapons in the United States. Representative Eric Swalwell, you know, the guy caught sleeping around with Chinese spies. It's still, well, he's in charge of impeaching Trump for a second time unconstitutionally, even though Trump's not in office, but I digress. Here's what he said. He's the guy who said that anybody that resists his own gun confiscation proposals might face nuclear weapons in response. Go ahead, hold on to your guns, he said. We have nukes. There's that time again. But I'll take it with this. It took New Zealand 6 days to enact stronger gun laws after a mass shooting. Shannon Watts, head of Moms Demand Action, said it's been 6 years since a man armed with an AR-15 slaughtered 20 children. America can do it too. I'll be back with Nikki right after this. We'll continue this conversation. Don't go away. Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
I'm out of time.
Yep. First half hour gone.
Yeah, well, I didn't get my point in. I'm going to have to do that when Nikki calls in. She'll be calling in now. But I wanted to wipe it out with Ilhan Omar. What?
I was going to say, spend a couple minutes, wrap that point up, and then hit it with Nikki.
Yeah, well. Let me know when you have Nikki on.
I will.
Man, that time flew. Was I at least able to get my points across?
Predominantly. I mean, I think you were trying to get one out there as the break came, but...
Well, I was trying to tie it together there, and I ran out of time, so I'll have to do it when we come back.
I think Nikki's calling now. Yep, Nikki on hold.
Roger that.
All right, we're close. Here we go. 30.
Back to Armed American Radio's Daily Defense with Mark Walters.
Welcome back inside Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, gunbroker.com studios on this Crossbreed Holsters microphone, the Platinum microphone. lit up for you today across the country. All of this being presented to you by X Insurance, a far superior product. I got a lot of email yesterday when I read a quote from an attorney from a member plan company who will go nameless, doesn't matter. There are a number of them out there whose claim to fame relative to your coverage is the fact that they have an insurance policy written in their name by a company and you become a member of their company or a member of their group or whatever they want to call it. And by default, because you're a member, you're covered under that other insurance plan. I say bunk to that. I don't cover my house that way, my car's that way. It took me a year and a half before I finally found X. Now I have real insurance policy written for me by a company that's going to defend me. And I read a quote yesterday. There's a young woman who is suing one of the companies because they dropped her. They just walked away from her at her moment of need when she's claiming defense, self-defense. She's being charged with a crime. The judge is letting her claim defense, self-defense, and they bailed on her. And she's suing the third-party member company and the insurance company whose policy it was. And I told you what the attorney said yesterday, and I got a ton of email. Kind of went along the lines, paraphrasing. Mark, I have a member benefit plan. You mentioned someone who got walked away from, and then you quoted one of the attorneys. It concerned me. Can you requote that again and explain a little bit more about that? Here it is in a nutshell. I'll just use the words of the company. In the company's response to the woman suing, the company, meaning the third-party member company, said that the person's claims do not apply to them because, meaning that they got dumped, they shouldn't be sued, because, quote, the company did not negotiate or issue the policy of insurance. What? The person bought the policy of insurance from their webpage because that's what they sold her as part of their main product. That won't happen to you with X. I don't have to go any further. Go look it all up yourself, okay? That won't have, X is the person that is the company that writes the policy in my name. I have a policy by X Insurance, an AM Best A-rated company. That quote is extremely telling because I don't want to have the fear that that's going to happen to me on the worst day of my life when my freedom is at stake because I defended myself lawfully and I may be wrongfully accused of a crime. Well, it's supposed to cover me if I'm wrongfully accused. That's what it's for. Well, we don't have to. We didn't negotiate or issue it. We just sold it to somebody as a product. The whole thing is, I don't like it. It's one of these, and that's why I have X Insurance, and I want you to look into it for your business, for your commercial business, for your lifestyle, okay, for your toys. For your guns, they'll write gap coverage. They'll cover your home for you. If you've got an event, they'll cover that. It's a real insurance company. So please, by all means, look into this. I have it. I want you to know that it's out there, xinsurance.com. Please don't get caught in this trap. It'd be the worst thing that could ever happen to you. All right. Before I go to my guest, Nikki Gosser, time just got the best of me. I ran out of time, and I'm not going to have time to wrap it all, so I'm going to do it quickly, the previous two segments. You get the idea. Guns are selling at a record pace. There were people out there who claimed somehow that Trump was the worst thing for guns ever. We've disproven that a million times over. Biden and the NSSF pointing that out themselves, NRA, we're all pointing it out. What Biden wants to do, New Zealand is doing it, and at the time they started doing it 2 years ago, the Dems now in control were praising it, and they're the people in power today. Many of them were running for president at the time. Biden himself included. Now they're trying to create the narrative that all gun owners are white supremacists, we're all insurrectionists, half the country, and we get this from boneheaded Ilhan Omar in a tweet. I will be honest. There's a first. I will be honest and say it's getting really scary to serve with people with guns who dehumanize and target you. I fear that with no accountability, no recourse, and calls to move on, will turn this toxic environment into a deadly situation. And all of this fueled by Nancy Pelosi, who called armed Republican members of Congress the enemy within and accuses them, according to, and I love this, the Daily Mail, of threatening Democrats as lawmakers demand more cash for security. The party that praised confiscation is now in party. I read you their own words. Yet somehow to some people, Trump was a danger to the Second Amendment. It is just astonishing to me Nikki Goser, welcome to the program. Always a pleasure. I love you very much. You know that as a friend and as a colleague and as someone who does what you do in the fight for freedom and the fight for our rights. I'm really concerned about what I'm seeing out there, Nikki. I know you probably missed the first 2 segments of the program, busy working, but you might have gotten the gist of what I was talking about. Could you comment on what you just heard me say? I'd love to hear something from you about it.
Well, I think that gun owners across the country, law-abiding gun owners, they're good people. That they're good people that care about the country. They care about the basic human right of self-defense. These are not dangerous people. Less than 1% of handgun carry permit holders ever do anything wrong with a gun. I can't think of any segment of society that's any more law-abiding.
Well, they sure are trying to change that narrative on us, and I just went over a lot of it in the first 2 segments. It's getting worse and worse and worse every single day, Nikki, and it concerns me because there's a lot of stupid people out there who fall for this stuff, and this is gaslighting to the nth degree, where they're going to continue to drive this narrative, gaslight people into just thinking, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe my guns are the problem. That's happening. It's happening in real time as you and I speak, and it's frightening. It's extremely frightening. All right, Nikki, let's move on to something else because, as you always do, you are, I can't say the word you said to me in the text, but it's kind of like, have you ever seen that Red Hot commercial? I put that on everything. Have you ever seen that? And it just lets you come up with the word. Nikki says, I'm getting done. And you are. You're getting it done. And here's the headline in a WSMV piece. Lawmaker proposes lifelong orders of protection. Can you tell us about that, please?
Yes. Well, there's going to be an option now in the state of Tennessee for a lifelong order of protection for victims of extreme violence. I know that most people feel like this is just a piece of paper, and believe me, I know it's just a piece of paper. And, you know, there are certain people that are just evil enough to walk right through it. And that's why it's so important that you carry a gun and you're well trained and know how to use it, and you have great situational awareness just in case that evil person does walk through it. But in my case, my husband was murdered in front of me by a man who was stalking me, and I had to leave my gun locked in the car because we were in a gun-free zone. But he's in prison now, and he has been sending me twisted love letters from prison for years.
And they are twisted, believe me.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying for me. He is going to be released early, apparently, for what they call good behavior credits, despite the fact that he's been doing this for years, which is extremely disturbing. He'll be released right now. His early release date is October 21st, 2028. And that's terrifying for me. But, you know, I went and talked to some legislators, and I talked with Representative William
30.
You know, this needs to be fixed. Orders of protection only last from, it's like 1 year. I think the max you can get is like 3. And I said, you know, this guy's in prison. He, you know, if I get an order of protection, it's going to last maybe a year. I mean, this guy's writing letters and tormenting me for years.
And you're talking about getting an order of protection for somebody that's already in jail. Nikki, we're getting ready to take a break. When we come back, we're going to pick it up right where we left off, because I have a couple questions about it myself that are a little bit unclear on the order of protection itself. I'm talking with Nikki Goser. Sure. The book is Stalked and Defenseless, and it's a good one. It's a good read, and you need to read it. And like Nikki always does when she gets involved and takes action, gets done. Okay? Gets done. You know what I'm talking about, and that's exactly what she's doing. Nikki Goser when we come back. Don't go away. Mark asks, Armed American Radio, did I fire the contractor? Yes and no. I have a new team, yes, coming out on Friday. I will tell you this, Greg. It's been a long day. I have a board meeting from 6 o'clock probably till 8 o'clock. And I think I'm going to try that Blanton's. I think I'm going to have one of those. I haven't tried it yet. I think today's a good day for it.
Sounds like it. It's Wednesday. Might as well. Whiskey Wednesday.
Whiskey Wednesday. So here goes the Pacific time zone again. I love that. The board meeting was called by folks on the West Coast. And they call it from 3 to 5. They get to go home after the board meeting. 3 to 5 is 6 to 8 here. So go west, young man. Go west.
Sounds like Arizona's looking much better every day.
Dubes, you're right about that, bro. Believe me, I wish you all could have been a fly on the wall when I made that phone call today at 4 minutes after noon Eastern time. Trust me on this one. Trust me. You've heard before, this call may be recorded for training purposes. I can promise you this is going to be a training. I can promise you.
Hopefully it's played for the crew that didn't show up.
They couldn't care less, dude. You know how those guys are.
Sadly, I do.
The contractor crew, didn't want to go to work on Monday, called out because it was cold.
Hungover.
Exactly. I have a buddy of mine is a president of a large construction outfit down in Florida, and he will be the first one to tell you that those companies are only as good as their subs, man. That's it. You got a plumber doing bad work, your company does bad plumbing work.
Yep. All right, we're getting close.
Of course we are.
30. I'm sure they don't spend the entirety of their day looking at the clock.
The following segment of Armed American Radio is being brought to you by Defender Coffee. When you drink Defender Coffee, you're making a donation to a gun rights organization of your choice that protects and defends your freedoms. Welcome back to the show. It says Liberty on that mug right there. That mug is filled with Defender Coffee. It's a little bit chilly and about 40 miles outside the ATL today, but nonetheless, nice, good, hot cup of coffee. Defender. And I got my 5-pound bag today. I just got a call. It came to the house. So that's cool. The 5-pound bag. I'm not drinking 5 pounds of coffee. I'm going to have to scale that back a little bit. It's a lot of coffee. But Defender Coffee is showing up at AAR Ranch on a regular basis. AAR is the promo code. Any portion of the profits, well, the profits go to where you want them to go. Mine go to the Second Amendment Foundation. Leadslingerswhiskey.com. Put your zip code in. Find a distributor near you for responsible lead slinger enjoyment. Second Amendment Foundation, SAF.org. They're the ones fighting in courtrooms. Please support us. Believe me, support us. My Pillow, man, y'all are hanging with Mike big time. He got into a dust-up over on Newsmax. The cancel culture in full swing. What a mess. What a complete mess. All the man wants to do is be able to talk. Whether you agree with him or not, the man has a right to talk in America. Now being cut off. There's calls for people to boycott Newsmax. It's crazy where this is at. Absolutely crazy. Because the anchor's afraid of cancel culture himself from the left. I don't know that the guy needs to be anchoring over there if he can't stand that heat. Dude, if the left bothering you worries you, go get a new job, pal, because that's not for you. But Mike Lindell, the support for Mike Lindell has been huge. Just real simple. Use the promo code AAR. Got an email today from someone who bought pretty much everything on the menu. And I sent that email, by the way, to Mike and Don, and they appreciate it. It wasn't just that, but it was all of Armed American Radio sponsors. Gunbroker.com, 100% free. Gunbroker.com. Car Arms, North American Arms, and Front Sight. I got an email from Jason today. Haven't had a chance to respond. But with cancel culture in full gear, Dr. Piazza is going to be making a statement on Armed American Radio, maybe this Sunday, if not this Sunday, the following Sunday, about what we can do to help combat this stuff. We're all in this together, believe me. And, of course, all of this is being presented to you by X Insurance. I told you at the beginning of the program, if you don't have X, you're playing with fire. Get off the gimmicks, quit worrying about free range bags and all that stuff, and get an insurance policy just like you have for everything else that matters in your life. Nikki, welcome back. I'm talking with Nikki Gosser. The book is Stalked and Defenseless. Nikki, these protective orders, I'm assuming that you're talking about a restraining order of some sort, correct?
Yes. Some people call it a restraining order. Some people call it an order of protection. Yes.
But it's a piece of paper. And evil doesn't care about a piece of paper. In fact, I know too many times I've written about them and talked about them where somebody like you getting that piece of paper, all it did was enrage evil to violate it, to make a point, and do even more harm. I mean, that's a side effect of this, is it not?
That is a potential side effect.
All right.
That definitely is. But let me give you my take on it.
Please.
There are some crimes that are so horrific, traumatizing, and life-altering that a lifelong order of protection is needed. A standard 1 to 3 year protection order is not acceptable, and it's not enough. It forces victims to have to endure more torment before being able to get another protection order, and they have to do this over and over again, and it adds to the trauma and the anxiety. So this would be a fast track to prison. They would already be on record.
Right.
These are the most violent of offenders. I'm talking criminal homicide. I don't think people realize that violent offenders, murderers, are let out of prison every day in this country. And sometimes those murderers choose to go out and terrorize their past victims again.
Nikki, you know this. I wrote about it in my first book, Lessons from Armed America. But I had an employee who I terminated a number of years ago in Tampa, who, after I terminated him, his wife worked for my partner in my partner's business down the hall in the same building. After I let him go that day, he went and got his wife, and the two of them took off. I never saw him again. 2 years later, I found out he murdered his wife. My intuition about him was correct. He wound up murdering his wife. I wrote about it in my book. He was being charged in South Georgia, where the crime occurred, murdering his wife. He was being charged with first-degree murder. They pled it down to second degree, they pled it down to, and he took the plea for voluntary manslaughter, mandatory 20 years, no parole in Georgia. His sentence is up November 2nd, 2022. That's coming up quick. That's how fast it happened yesterday. Does he hold me responsible for terminating him? I don't know. Maybe am I the one that, sent his life in a tailspin? Who knows? He's getting out in 2 years. He will have served his entire sentence. It goes by like this, just like that. I wrote about it in my book, Lessons from Armed America, if you want to read about it. And Nikki, I want to point out, too, that these type of orders, that while people may not pay, that what they do is this is something on their legal record that enhances a prison sentence if somebody violates it, okay? And while they work in many cases, and probably most cases that I would say they work, the cases that they don't, as you said, they provide a fast track to prison, and they provide that extra legal oomph to get even more of a sentence, right? So these things are very valuable.
Yes, and that is my intent. I'm not naive, believe me. I realize it's just a piece of paper, and I carry a gun every single day for my own self-defense. But let me just say this. I think all of us that carry, none of us want to have to use that gun.
Of course.
We don't sit around wishing that we can use it. If anything, we try to avoid it. You only want to use that if you are truly fearful for your life. But, there are situations where you might have to. God forbid you ever do, but you might have to. And I think that, if law enforcement and the courts see that you have a lifelong order of protection, against this person that you just had to defend yourself against, I think that's a pretty solid defense.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, and it's sad and pathetic that we even have to have these conversations, quite frankly. But you know what? We do. Because if we don't, very few people will be hearing any of this information. And it's critical and it's vital that your story stays out there forever. And you will come on this program as long as God gives me breath in my lungs to tell this story forever, because people need to hear it. And you have done so much in the state of Tennessee. God bless you for what you've done in Tennessee. Now, any idea how this is going to move along? How's this going to progress? What do you think? What's the end result here?
Well, I'm hoping that it passes. I think it will.
Good.
I think they're going to have the votes to get it passed.
Who would vote against it?
Out, there are certain Democrats that would probably vote against it.
My God.
Democrats that are influenced by like people like prisoner rights advocates.
Do prisoner rights advocates not care about the murder of your husband? None of this makes sense.
I think they tend to care more about prisoners, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I'm all for. I'm all for bringing executions back in the public town square. It might become a deterrent to some of these sick wackos out there who prey on innocent people. Let me tell you something. You have a right to keep and bear arms. Exercise it. Exercise it. While you never want to have to, God forbid the person on the other side, should they break into your house or try to murder your husband, because I'm going to guarantee you right now, Nikki, everybody knows you're armed. God bless you for that and for fighting and standing up for our right to keep and bear arms. You'll be back on the program soon. What just an absolute travesty that Nikki or anybody has to go through that and that we even have to talk about it. But you know what? We do. It's Armed American Radio. It's what we do. Armed American Radio's Daily Defense going to be back and do it again tomorrow here on this Crossbreed Holsters microphone. Gunbroker.com studios. All of it brought to you by X. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you on the radio.
You've just filled your prescription for freedom with Mark Walters, presented by X Insurance. X Insurance on the Armed American Radio Network.
Boom. Flew right by.
Ridiculous how fast that went.
Yep. It's not anything new though.
No, but when you got to rush through, today was exceptionally difficult. The whole day went like this. It flew by, and I mean, from the time when I sat down, I got caught up. I looked at my watch. I said, "Man, I got 15 minutes. I got to get in that seat." And then I made a cup of coffee, brought it down the hallway, and by the time I got in my seat, I looked up, and it was 55 minutes before. I'm like, man, how did that happen so fast? You know, did it take me that long to make a cup of coffee? And then all of a sudden, it was 2 minutes after. I'm like, well, ruh-roh, better get with you. You know?
Yep.
And then it just, I didn't get my points in, and I feel a little bit too rushed on that. I'll go back, and it's a topic that I could have easily spent a solid hour on tying together, but I had to do that. That was the rush. That was the Band-Aid job, guys. That's what I'm telling you, okay? That was the Band-Aid job. I apologize. All right, Holmes. I'm good to go. You need me for anything?
Nah, I'm good if you're good.
Rock on. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you, man.
There went Greg. Fastest hour on radio for sure, guys. That no doubt. Today proved that. Robin, I'm telling you, man, no joke. That hour flew. Where is she? I want to give her a shout out here. Where'd she go? Angeline Notelli, there you go. Ciao. Just letting you know I'm here. I see you there. Thanks for being here. Appreciate that. Watching on YouTube today, huh? Oh, there she is. Yeah, I just gave you a shout out, and there you were. You were the latest comment. Angeline, good for you. Thanks for being here. Ciao. John, easy second day guess. Yeah, no doubt about that, John. Jeremy, you're right about that. Time flies when you're doing what you love. No question about that. Guys, let me tell you what's cooking this afternoon. Board meeting in exactly 60 minutes from now. And I'll be able to tell you about some of the topics. Normally this meeting would occur in September, but I don't think we should be waiting that long till September. Do you? Not with everything going on? By the way, amazing to me when I cover this every single day that there are people out there that are foolish enough to tell you that Trump was the worst thing for gun rights. It's just astonishing to me. I just don't get it. I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but wow. Just wow. Omar, I do not have any. I mean, I have shot one. I don't know much about them. A pre-87. Oh, you picked up a pre-87 model for cheap. Good for you. Yeah. Dubes, yes. Jeremy, he probably isn't going to. His comment yesterday about his pen was he isn't making law or attempting to make law. He's getting rid of bad policy. That's what that idiot said yesterday. As he cut down 60,000 jobs, as he opens up our southern borders, as he authorizes building a fence to wall himself in the White House or the Congress. I mean, it's just, unbelievable. Mark, when is the next bill date? Friday, and it will be the final bill date. If that bill date is not met Friday by noon, if I don't see the contractor crew by Friday at noon, then maybe I'll record the conversation and put it out here because it'll be epic. Today's was pretty good. Today's was one of those conversations where at this point I no longer care and you're on the other end of it. So buckle down, and I'm going to apologize to you in advance, but guess what? That's your job. And then just let go. And that's exactly what I did. Today was one of those conversations my kids love to hear when I go off on something, especially when I'm passionate about it. Well, they used to love it when I was little. But I did not hold back today. I did not play nice in the sandbox. And my points were well made. So we'll see how well it sunk in for Friday. We shall see. Yeah, Susie, record it for premium content. I may very well do that. I did record my half hour and I recorded it on video. So you get both sides of the call because I did run it through my board last night on Sirius XM. I just haven't gotten to it. I've got a ton of video to get out on premium. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Ron, Trump wasn't the worst, but he wasn't a real big friend either with the bump stock ban. You're correct about that. Nobody's denying that. However, there's politics in play, bud. And as much as I hate to say this, you've got to understand that there is politics in play. And at that time, you had 57, I think it was, 54 or 57 dead Americans. The political pressure on Republicans and Democrats in Washington to quote-unquote do something was immense. And in all likelihood, there was going to be movement on bills that would have still been harming us today. And I'm not going to deny the fact that that bump stock was banned on the altar, and it was martyred, if you will, on the altar of gun control to stop that momentum. There's no question about it. And I believe me, I wanted to put my name on a case. I went out and bought one because of that. I knew it was coming. But believe me, that pales in comparison to what we see with this administration. You're never going to get everything you want all the time from any politician ever. Accept that. Okay? It's not win or lose at all. It's not the way it is. And for people who think like that is really incredible to me. Yeah, it sucked. I get that. And I'm the one that hates, judging success by how many few sucky things get through. But when it comes to Washington politics, that game is played. There's no way around it. And we could have had a lot worse because of what was going on behind the scenes there. And we still don't know what happened in Vegas. We still have no idea. The FBI has bailed on us, and at this stage of the game, we will never know. You'll never get the facts. I don't care what report comes out. It's going to be like a Warren Commission report. It'll be challenged. It's going to be conspiracy theories. People will never know from this point forward, and they did that intentionally. And yes, a bump stock ban sucked. There's no question about it. I hated him for it. I wish he didn't do it. I wish he would have stood firm, but he didn't. That's what we got. But if you think that's the worst president, makes him the worst pro-gun president, or he's not pro-gun, but because of that, you're out of your mind, you've lost your marbles. And I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about others in general. To suggest that when we are up against what we're up against now, and that's why I did what I did today, compared those statements to, you never heard those statements come out of a Trump administration. Trump would have never signed any of the bills that Biden would have, and to suggest that he would is ludicrous. You're living in La La Land, and you're flying around on a unicorn spitting fairy dust farts, okay? Now, I'm not saying that to you. I'm going off here. Angry Mark is a little bit out of the box. Free Angry Mark. Free Angry Mark. Yeah, I mean, to suggest that somehow Trump was the worst pro, it's just ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. It doesn't even warrant a conversation. Jeremy, unicorn, UFO. Yeah. And Ron, I know, you know where I'm coming from there. You know exactly where I'm coming from. Believe me, the bump stock thing, incredibly dangerous because of the way it went down. We've discussed it many times. The bump stock was classified as a machine gun. That's how they were able to do what they did. It has no moving parts. And the concern, of course, the ATF doing it gave Trump plausible deniability. All right, executive order, no executive order. It didn't make any difference. It was classified with no moving parts as a machine gun, which means when the Democrats are ready, and they more than likely will be, they can now classify my semi-automatic firearm, which can still be bump fired without a bump stock. Well, maybe we didn't misclassify the bump stock wrong. Maybe we've misclassified semi-automatic rifles wrong for all these years. There's a Sheila Jackson Lee who wants you to get psychological evaluations. You think that's a stretch? Not in this lifetime. So yeah, it sucked. It's Washington. It happens, unfortunately. And believe me, when it comes to politics, the way politics are played like that, you have to take some, you've got to put up, it's just going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. We all would like to see a leader stand up and say, hey, guess what? Not now, not up in here, not in my house, get off my lawn, it's not going to happen. The political reality does not unfold like that in D.C. There were moderate Republicans that would have caved, and we would have seen far worse. That's just a reality, whether you like that or not. Remember on this show, we don't forget what's happening. We know what's happening. We cannot refuse to accept the situation. We have to deal with it. Politics sucks. There's no question about it, but it just kind of is what it is. And Vern, yeah, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. The morons on the left continue to spew what they spew. Ain't that a fact? By the way, when Biden begins moving on guns, and he will, and when they begin moving through the Judiciary Committee with Durbin in charge, and they will, then we can ask those people who hated Trump and thought he was the worst in the world, and we can ask them to explain themselves at that point. And I will. All right, guys. God bless you. Got a lot of work to do. Got to prepare for a board meeting here. Want to get the podcast up for you. We'll clue you in on all kinds of fun stuff coming up in the next couple days. And now we're on contractor watch, right? Keep you posted on that. We're on contractor watch. God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you on the radio tomorrow.